if I was to take acceptance of responsibility for the accusations that
hold on, let me stop you right there. It ain't an accusation. It's in black and white, bro. I'm reading your lawyer pleading on your behalf, trying to get this record sealed because of this information that you gave. It's you saying that you never said that you didn't do it, but you had me believing for 5 years that you kept it solid, dog. And in the paperwork, it say that in 2 months, y'all got locked up in April. In June 6th, you gave a proffer. And you gave up information. You gave them folk the code to your phone and let them review it in your presence. That's what the paperwork say.
I was lying on you niggas to go do that, so y'all wasn't gonna hear the last of it out of me. I go on now, lie to the feds and get called a rat, but yet y'all got a nigga saying he did 20-something years for a dude. I don't have a Tammy Collins. I don't have a Cuffy. I don't have an alleged person saying that Ralo got him locked up. Never have, won't ever be.
The meeting that took place on June 6th, 3 days later, according to the document that Mr. Steele entered. 5 days later, on June 11th, we know that there is a phone extraction done of Mr. Davis' phone. We also know there was a physical review of the phone that was done at the same time as the proffer. So on June 6th and on June 11th, we know that that phone had been reviewed. His conflict arose, and it was the government that put it forth to Mr. Steele and to Mr. Joshua and raised it before the court. And further, Your Honor, we acknowledge that Mr. Joshua had a conflict and that Mr. Joshua brought Mr. Davis in for a proffer. And that's why blank acknowledged in Mr. Steele's motion that came out of that proffer. Now he wants to go a step further and say that we can't use information that came out of the consent for the phone, for which we had a search warrant as well, of finding that his lawyer was not just a lawyer. It was just an issue with him being in on the marijuana business. No mention of drug trafficking, and then the other mention and the other person proffer that occurred prior to June 6th. Those questions were about Mr. Jones, and Mr. Steele wants to make the leap that if we knew about Mr. Jones, we should have known about Mr. Joshua. And that is just not borne out by the facts. That the United States operated, under the knowledge that Mr. Joshua had a conflict. And certainly, I'd be remiss if I didn't say but blank. And we absolutely pushed back on the idea that we knew about this conflict and tried to capitalize on it, or that we somehow facilitated this by intentionally not reaching out to Mr. Steele. That allegation, I push back on that as aggressively as I can, because that's not at all supported by the facts. And it's not at all sort of how my office does business. And so for those reasons, Your Honor, we argue that he's not met his burden to establish a prima facie case to show that we are operating under a conflict, in his motion to recuse the prosecution. It was introduced directly in the context of crimes. Tell us about As Joshua's relationship with Terrell Davis. I found out on or about July 24, 2018 of a potential meeting that I was not in on June 6, 2018. It was my understanding that Mr. Davis plans to cooperate and resolve this matter. If so, I don't understand why we're having another detention. I really think it's the agents. We are involved in who can testify about the key dates surrounding the proffer and the search of the phone database, the obtaining the information about Mr. Jones and Mr. Joshua. And that sort of, formulates obviously on July the 24th. If my notes are correct or my memory is correct, that's the same day of the interview with Mr. Hart, where the question about Mr. Joshua are a whole lot more pointed and directed than the questions asked by Mr. Buchanan at Mr. Muhammad's meeting. But there's a whole lot more information that's obtained about Mr. Joshua and his involvement in the case around June the 6th to the time that we get down to July 24th. Those are some of the key dates. And when, of course, we have Mr. Jones is not arrested until about a month later. I think the superseding indictments is returned on the 6th of August. And Mr. Jones is arrested 4 days after that. It's United States versus Davis. District Court of Georgia. This is on paper. This is a lot of information. What you're going to notice in this document is a lot of documents and a lot of these hearings are sealed. But I want y'all to pay attention to a few things on this document. Notice of hearing as to Terrell Davis and Manu Jones on September 20th, 2018. Hearing set for 10/15/2018 at 10 a.m. before Magistrate Judge John Allen Baveman on 379 sealed motion. This is another motion that they're trying to get sealed. The defendant and counsel for defendant Terrell Davis and Manu Jones must be present for this hearing. Everything's sealed. I'm gonna show you how I found out who Manu Jones was. October 19th, 2018. Order granting 382 motion to modify conditions of release as to Manu Jones. Now we found out Manu Jones was locked up in July. Mr. Jones' condition of release are hereby modified to substitute the requirement of a curfew in lieu of home detention. Mr. Jones shall be restricted to his residence every day as directed by the pretrial services officers or supervising officer. All other conditions of release remain in effect, signed by the Magistrate Judge K. Larkins. That's the same judge in Ralo case. You know, we dealing with the same case. That was October 19th. A lot of what Ralo had going on is sealed. November 2nd, sealed. November 7th, sealed. But this is how I found out who my man Manu Jones was. 428 motion to travel as to Manu Jones. Defendant shall be permitted to travel to Los Angeles, California from November 29th, 2018 to December 2nd, 2018 for the purpose of promoting the heavyweight championship fight involving Mr. Wilder. Of course, that's Deontay Wilder. Defendant shall provide his travel arrangements to include his flight and hotel information to his supervising officer prior to his departure, signed by Magistrate Judge John K. Larkins. More sealed documents, November 20th and 21st. We ain't gotta see too much more.